Hello, welcome to LifeTalk Now. I'm Mark Crutcher.
And I'm Renee Hobbs. Thank you for joining us.
Renee, we are going to do something special today that we're going to do from time to time, and that is we're only going to take questions that people have sent in. We've got a lot of questions that people have sent in, so we can only get to a few.
Right.
But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, I'll start. So Sarah has asked the question about Tony Tinderholt. He is our state representative here in Texas that passed or filed the House Bill 948. It's called Abolish of Abortion in Texas Act that would legislate to stop the murder of unborn children. And her question to you is, Mark, are you encouraging others in the pro-life movement to support this bill? Sarah states it's a no-brainer, but we have some pro-life leaders actually not support other abolish bills. Thoughts?
Yeah, I can't understand how anyone would not support an effort like this. I hear all these loony arguments that, well, this may be unconstitutional and the state will spend a lot of money on it and it won't go through. The Supreme Court will knock it down. It won't pass muster and so forth. There are many, many problems with that argument. First off, these bills, if it is passed, and I hope it is, these bills sometimes take years to get to the Supreme Court. If someone sits here and tell me that this thing won't pass Supreme Court muster, the first thing I'm going to ask them is, okay, tell me who's going to be on the Supreme Court 5 years from now.
Exactly.
And tell me what their position on abortion is going to be. Unless you can do that, you can't answer that question. You can't make this statement that this thing may or may not be constitutional.
Right.
And I've always pointed out that if you go back to the Roe versus Wade decision, if you had gone a year or 2 years earlier than that and you were a pro-abort and you wanted abortion to be legal, you would have told those people that what they were trying to do was physically and legally and constitutionally impossible. But they didn't have enough sense to listen to that. They just went ahead and did it. And that's got to be our attitude. We got to be a little more free swinging here and not just assume that we know everything that's going to happen.
Right.
We don't know what the Supreme Court would do with it today.
That's right.
We certainly don't know what the Supreme Court would do that once it got there.
Right.
And we need to keep firing as many shots as we can at the pro-aborts, and I don't understand. It'd be like she says, it's a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the Ohio heartbeat bill that didn't get passed.
Well, it got passed, and then it got vetoed by the governor, who claims to be pro-life.
Yeah. Right.
Kasich claims to be pro-life, but then he vetoed it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something else. This bill, of course, is here in Texas, and there's certain states around the country. You mentioned Ohio. That's one of them. And I think in Texas is certainly another one that other states look to see what's possible and what can be done.
Right. Kind of the poster child.
Right. Just like we did with HB2. When Texas passed HB2, all the other states that have pro-life legislatures were looking at Texas and saying, oh, we could do something like that.
And they have.
Right.
Yeah.
And they don't need to be looking at Texas and seeing us wimp out on a bill like this, even if you know it can't pass, even if you know it can't pass the Supreme Court challenge.
Right. Yeah, it's baby steps. Let's,
do what we can. Right.
Okay, so Kathy, she asked, or she has stated she is an identical twin herself. When twins are aborted, does that count as one abortion or two? Do these figures we hear reflect abortions where 2 or 3 babies are killed at one time?
No, they're going to reflect just one, because they're counting the number of abortions, not the number of babies killed. Remember, the abortion lobby doesn't consider these babies. Sometimes they'll tell you they're babies, they just don't care. They'll kill them anyway.
Right.
But no, they just consider that one abortion, because one abortion might kill 3 people.
Right.
But it's still just one abortion in their mind. So these numbers don't reflect multiples.
Right. And it wouldn't matter anyways. They don't count them. The CDC doesn't count them.
They don't count them anyway.
The Guttmacher.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Mark has asked, we always talk about saving the life in regards to humans in the womb. What are we doing to save the life of IVF babies?
That's another issue people need to be aware of, and you'd be amazed how many, even pro-life people, we had that experience here at the office with a construction worker that was here, don't realize how IVF works, and that even when it's successful, if they go in and they fertilize, let's say 15 eggs, and they implant 5 of them hoping 1 or 2 will take, the others that don't get implanted and the ones that slough off, so to speak, those are abortions. And people need to realize that. If you believe that life begins at the moment of fertilization, which it does, there's no biological, medical text anywhere in the world that doesn't say life doesn't begin at that point. If you believe that, then if you're if you're having an IUD, for example, we've had people right here in this office that didn't understand that an IUD works as an abortion. It causes fertilized eggs not to attach to the womb.
Right.
That's an abortion.
That's right.
IVF causes abortion. And like you said, we had that, or like we were talking about a minute ago, we had a construction worker here one time, really good, pro-life, hardcore Christian man, and he and his wife were considering IVF because they were having problems conceiving. And I brought that up to him, and it's like the light went off. He never had even thought about it. Because I asked him, I said, well, okay, if they fertilize 15 of those eggs, and one of them takes, and so you get your little baby, what about the other 14? You just had 14 abortions.
Right, they're left there as snowflake babies in the freezer,
Or
waiting to be trashed.
Or they're thrown away, or
Right.
whatever happens to them.
Yeah.
But, his eyes lit up, if you remember.
I do, yeah.
And he called his wife right that minute and said, wait a minute, we're not doing this.
Right.
And then a few months later, she was
Right.
pregnant anyway.
Yeah, they had a baby anyways.
Yeah, had a little baby boy.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, so Denise, how do you feel about the Sierra Club taking on empowering women's rights and pro-choice community?
Well, Sierra Club is part of this cabal of hardcore leftist so-called environmental groups. They really use environmentalism as an excuse to advance a godless Marxist agenda. That's what it's about. And Sierra Club is a good example of this. Now, in years past, organizations like Sierra Club and other environmental groups, and even groups like Amnesty International, always tried to claim they were neutral on the abortion issue. They didn't take a stand. They've been smoked out here in the last few years. And now you're seeing Sierra Club and others come out here and saying, well, we need to restrict population because that lowers the carbon footprint and so forth. And what you have to understand about these people is that they worship the creation, not the creator.
That's right.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
to suggest that in order to save trees, we'll kill babies shows how screwed up these people's logic is. But this is going on everywhere. And I think, we've talked before on LifeTalk that we're in a phase of this battle in which people are having to put on a uniform. They're having to put on somebody's uniform, one or the other.
Right.
And sometimes they put on the pro-life uniform, and sometimes they put on a pro-abortion uniform, because that's what they always were.
Right.
And I think what people need to recognize is that we are in a cultural civil war in this country. We're in a battle, and it's a classic battle that started in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, it's a spiritual battle.
Yes, between
Right.
good and evil.
Right.
And it's a battle for the heart and soul of America. And you're seeing this more and more every day that goes by in all kinds of issues.
Right.
And that, again, we're not putting on your uniform, period.
Yeah, putting on your uniform doesn't mean that restaurants and retail stores should make a claim over which way they go. I disagree with that completely.
What do you mean?
Well, because restaurants like Chili's, they we're going to fund Planned Parenthood.
Right.
They need to stay out of it. It's
Well, no, to me, they need to be on the pro-life side.
Well,
but if they're not going to take the pro-life side,
Right.
but they're not. Everybody
Right.
is being forced to put on a uniform one
Right.
way or the other. And so you see this with restaurants and grocery store chains and
It's going on
car
everywhere.
companies, and so we are being forced into this cultural civil war,
Right.
and you have to choose one side or the other.
Yep.
You can't remain neutral.
That's right.
Right.
Okay, one more, Leslie. We would like you to address the suggestions made on your Facebook page regarding the killing of Willie Parker. One of your followers gave two names: an abortionist who was killed and the killer.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more of this out there, and I think part of it is driven by frustration. People that aren't familiar with the pro-life effort don't realize that we're winning, and we are winning. And I know this. I've been in it almost 4 decades, and I can tell you, I went through the parts where we weren't winning, and we're winning. And so these people don't realize that they get frustrated, and they use some sort of bizarre theology to justify what they're doing. And Willie Parker, you mentioned, people are suggesting he be shot. He's an abortionist in Mississippi. And
A Christian abortionist in Mississippi.
yeah, right. As if you believe there's such a thing, right?
Not at all.
No. But yeah, he says he does abortions because of his Christian faith.
Right.
He's a liar and a heretic. And he recently said, yes, I agree that the unborn child they're not a person, but they're a human entity. I'd love to have Willie Parker come on here and tell me what is a human entity.
What's the difference?
What is a human entity? What does that mean?
Right.
I've never heard that term
An
before.
empty human shell.
But when you're trying to kill one of them, you got to call them something other than a human being and a human person. That's the history of evil, is when people want to commit genocide, they label their victim something that's easier to kill than a human being or a person. Anyway, these people are suggesting that he be killed or some other abortionist be killed. This is misguided. You know, you'll hear people say, and I've been down this trail with people like this before, and they'll say, well, if we kill that one abortionist, if we shoot that one abortionist, then all the babies he would have killed won't get killed. That's nonsense. Because even if you ignore the morality of killing another human being, even if you're willing to ignore that, you're not solving anything. Because let's say he was going to kill 20 babies on a day that you shot him, and so now those babies are alive. The government will use that action to shut down legitimate pro-life work. And I've had this view for many years. You know, we did the interview with Paul Hill, and I even had this conversation with Paul Hill before he was executed by the state of Florida for shooting an abortionist. And I told him that I couldn't countenance what he was doing.
Right.
I admired his commitment to the cause, and here's a man that was willing to give his life for what he believed. But he might have saved 20 babies that day when he shot that abortionist. But the actions that the government then was justified in taking, or thought they were justified in taking, against the pro-life movement, I think cost thousands of babies their lives, because pro-lifers were swept off the streets. You couldn't, for years, it was much more difficult to do any kind of legitimate pro-life work. And plus you lost credibility with the public. So if you had a piece of legislation, for example, that would pass and save some babies, that was out of the question now.
Right.
So those babies died.
Right.
Because that abortionist was shot.
Yeah.
So unless you get to the point where people say, we're willing to take up arms and it's going to stop abortion, we're going to shoot every abortionist in the country, or we're going to line up in some sort of armed conflict against the government, all you're doing, unless you're willing to go to that extreme, all you're doing is just shooting one person. And I don't think God intended the pro-life movement to be out here saying, let's just every once in a while shoot one of these guys and pick him off and save whatever babies are being saved, going to be killed that day. It doesn't work that way. No. And in the long run, you have to look at the bigger picture, not just that little tiny narrow part of it. You got to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that it costs babies. It doesn't save babies.
Right.
And when I talk about looking at the bigger picture, you know, you've heard me make this analogy before. Gone with the Wind is 3 hour and 36 minutes or something long. It's a long movie. If I showed you a 10-second clip from it, you'd never seen it. And I showed you a 10-second clip from Gone with the Wind, and then said, okay, now tell me what that movie's about. There's no way you could do that.
I mean, I could speculate, but I wouldn't be correct.
Out of a 3.5 hour movie, you couldn't look at a 15-second clip and come anywhere close to what that movie was about.
That's right.
Well, that's the kind of mentality that's dangerous. If you look at just one little part of something like this, you say, well, we shoot that abortionist, those babies live. Okay, that's true. That's true for that one little clip. But look at the big picture. Right. Look at what happens in the general scheme of things.
Right.
And so you sacrificed whatever moral compunction you might have had against taking the life of another human being, and you gained nothing at the best, and probably you cost babies their lives, and that's not what the pro-life movement's about.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are good questions, and occasionally we'll do one of these where all we do is take questions, and if we don't have a particular subject we want to talk about. Anyway, that's all the time we have for this session, and I want to remind you that Life Dynamics needs your financial support to continue doing the work that we're doing, and we've got a lot of really neat projects that are going on. Some of them I wish we could tell you about, but we can't. But anyway, we do need your financial support, and we look forward to that.
Yeah, so if you have any questions or comments or issues that you would like to see addressed, give us a call, 940-380-8800, or send me an email, Renee@ProLifeAmerica.com, or you can find me on Facebook.
Yep, and until next time, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops.